This was when I was, I think, 23, early 20s. I was living with two roommates at the time in this kind of small town area. This was somewhere in the Southwest, like desert, but not the postcard kind. I worked at a diner then, like early mornings mostly, so my schedule was kind of weird. I'd be up at like 5, off by noon, and then just nothing for the rest of the day unless I picked up another shift. My roommates, BB and Courtney, they both worked later jobs, so we'd overlap in the afternoons, and that's usually when we'd hang out. Driving around, getting iced coffee, sometimes going out to these random spots people would mention. That's kind of how this whole thing started, actually. There was this guy BB knew, I think from high school or something, and he mentioned this old mine area outside town. Something people used to go to when they were bored. He said it wasn't really guarded, just kind of there. I remember him saying something about it being technically closed, but nobody really cared. That should have been enough for me to not go, but honestly, we did stuff like that all the time. Just driving out somewhere, sitting around. So one afternoon, we decided to go. Like 40 minutes out, and the roads got worse the further we went. At some point, it wasn't even really a road, more like a path that people had driven enough times to flatten it out. There were no houses, no lights, nothing like that. Just open land and some hills in the distance. When we got there, it didn't even look like much. Just this kind of broken down area with old wood beams, some metal pieces, and like a collapsed entrance that you could tell used to be something bigger. There wasn't a big open mine shaft or anything like that. Pieces of it had caved in over time. There were rocks scattered around and some graffiti on the remaining wood structures, which I remember because it made it feel less abandoned in a weird way. We didn't go there planning to explore. We just sat around at first, talking, messing around on our phones, taking pictures. It was quiet in that way where you can hear your own movements too clearly, like every step on gravel sounds louder than it should. After a while, Courtney pointed out this opening a little off to the side. It wasn't the main collapsed part. It looked more like a side tunnel or something, but it wasn't fully blocked. It kind of dipped inward like a shallow cave. You couldn't see very far in from where we were standing, just darkness after a certain point. We didn't go inside. I want to make that clear, because sometimes when I think back on it, it almost feels like we did, but we didn't. We just walked up to it. That's it. Just close enough to look. And right away, before we even said anything, this smell, it wasn't like dirt. It smelled like perfume. It was strong, like someone had sprayed a lot of it in a closed space. It didn't make sense. I remember actually laughing a little at first because I thought someone had been there before us, like recently, but the place didn't look touched. BB said it too, like, why does it smell like that? The smell got stronger the closer we got to the opening, and it wasn't a nice kind either. It was too heavy, like old perfume, something that sits in the air too long. We didn't have flashlights or anything, just our phones. So we turned them on and kind of leaned in a little, not stepping inside, but just enough to see past the first bit of darkness. The light didn't go very far. It kind of just hit the ground and a little bit of the wall, and everything looked uneven, like the tunnel curved or dipped further in. Just rocks and dirt and shadows. But then BB kind of grabbed my arm, and she pointed further in. I had to squint a little because the light wasn't reaching properly, but there was something there, like a shape. It looked like a person, like the outline of someone standing further back where the light couldn't fully reach. I was thinking it was just the way the rocks were stacked or something, because your eyes do that sometimes in the dark. But then it moved. Enough to tell it wasn't a rock or anything like that. It shifted, and then it ran deeper into the tunnel, out of the light completely. I didn't even process it. My brain kind of stalled for a second, like trying to figure out what I just saw. Courtney just said, "Did you see that?" And we all started talking at the same time, like overlapping, trying to confirm it. We weren't imagining it. There was someone in there. My light moved when I turned, and it caught the ground more clearly near the entrance. There were things there that I didn't see before. Bags, like women's bags, different kinds, some small, some bigger, and clothes too, kind of piled. It looked messy, like someone had just thrown things down or pushed them together. I stepped a little closer, right at the edge, and I could see more of it. There were IDs too, like cards, scattered or grouped in a few places. I picked one up, I don't know why. It looked normal at first glance, like a work ID or something, but there was no company name. Just a photo, a name, and then a bunch of numbers and letters underneath. Not like a license. Different. I remember feeling this really weird kind of confusion, like none of it was connecting. Why would there be bags and IDs in a place like that? And why did it all smell like that perfume, like it was covering something up, or I don't know. Bibi picked up another one, and Courtney was just kind of looking around, like she didn't want to touch anything. It didn't look like someone lost their stuff. It looked like someone put it there. We were already saying we should leave, like kind of half joking at first, but then more serious. I still had that ID in my hand, and Bibi had one too. I don't remember deciding to take them, but we did, to check later or something, like we said we would look them up when we got home. And then, right when we turned to go back toward the car, there was this sound. It was loud, sharp, like something cracking through the air. I don't know how to explain, but all three of us reacted the same way. We ducked without thinking. It sounded like a gunshot. I can't say for sure, I've never been around guns like that, but it felt like that. Close enough that it didn't echo much, just immediate. Bibi screamed, Courtney grabbed my arm, and we just ran. And the whole time, even while we were running, I could still smell that perfume on my clothes or in the air or something, like it followed us out of that place. And I don't know if that part is just in my head now, like the smell following us, because it doesn't really make sense, but I remember it that way. Even when we got into the car, it felt like it was still there, like faint but stuck. Bibi started the car right away. She didn't even say anything, just turned the key and drove. The tires kind of slipped a little on the dirt before catching, and we just took off back the way we came. I think we were all just trying to process what happened, or maybe just trying not to think about it too clearly. My heart was still going fast, like it wouldn't slow down, and my hands were shaking, especially the one that was still holding that ID. I didn't even realize I still had it until we were already a few minutes away. After 10 minutes or so, Bibi finally said, "That was a gunshot." She said it really flat, not like a question. And I said, I didn't know, because I didn't. I still don't. It could have been something else, but it didn't sound like something random. It sounded aimed, if that makes sense, even though I didn't see anything. Courtney kept saying we shouldn't have gone there, like over and over, repeating it under her breath. I think she was crying a little, but she was trying not to make it obvious. I didn't say much. I was mostly thinking about that shape we saw, the person, or whatever it was, and how it ran deeper inside instead of coming out. That bothered me more than the sound. We didn't stop anywhere on the way back, just straight home. By the time we got back into town, it was getting dark. Like people out, lights on, cars passing, all the regular stuff. It felt wrong compared to where we had just been, like we stepped out of something and into something else too quickly. When we got inside the apartment, we locked the door right away. Bibi checked the windows too, which she never did before, like not like that. We all just kind of stood in the living room for a minute, not really knowing what to do next. Then Courtney said we should look at the IDs. I don't know why that was the next thing. I had mine in my pocket still, and Bibi had hers. We put them on the table and just stared at them before actually picking them up again. They looked normal in the sense that they were plastic cards, like work badges, but everything else about them felt off. The photos were clear, like real people, women, different ages. The names looked normal too, nothing weird there. But there was no company name, no logo, nothing that said where they were from. Just a blank space where you'd expect something like that. And then underneath the name there was this line of characters. Numbers and letters, but not in any format I recognized. It wasn't like a serial number or anything I'd seen before. Some of the letters looked, I don't know, slightly different, like not exactly English, but close enough that you could mistake them. Bibi tried Googling one of the names first. Nothing. Then I tried mine. Also nothing. We even tried searching the number strings, just copying them exactly, but it didn't bring anything up. No company, no database, nothing even similar. It was like they didn't exist, or like we weren't searching the right thing, but we tried different ways and still nothing. I kept looking at the ID I had. The picture on it, the woman, she looked normal, like someone you'd pass in a store and not think twice about. At one point, I noticed the smell again, not strong like before. I thought it was on my clothes, so I went and changed, put everything I was wearing into the laundry. But even after that, I still thought I could smell it, like it was in my hair or something. I asked Bibi if she noticed it, and she said no. The bags and the IDs, how they looked like they were placed there, not lost. And that person, or whatever it was, standing back there in the dark like, what? A week later, I went back online and searched the name again, the one from my ID, just in case something came up later. I don't know why I thought it would change. It didn't. Still nothing. This was a couple years ago. I had just moved out to a rural area, kind of middle of nowhere type place. There were still neighbors, but you couldn't see them unless you drove a bit. Lots of trees, long roads, the kind that don't have street lights, just your headlights and whatever the moon gives you. I moved there with a friend of mine, Toby. We weren't like lifelong friends, more like we knew each other through some online stuff and ended up meeting in person a few times. He had the same idea as me, which was basically to get somewhere cheap, live simple for a while, and figure things out. I had just sold my car before that. I kind of regret now, but at the time it made sense. I needed the money more than I needed the car. The house we rented, it was this old place, one floor. The front yard was dirt and some dry grass, and there was a gravel driveway that curved a little before it reached the road. Behind the house there was just trees, like straight into woods. No fence. You could walk back there and just keep going, which I didn't really do much. The kitchen had those cabinets that didn't fully close unless you pushed them twice. Stuff like that. It felt lived in before us, but not recently, like someone left and never really came back. I'd wake up late, usually around 10 or 11, and then spend most of the day working on this online business thing I was trying to get going. It wasn't making much, if anything, but I kept at it. I was also looking for a part-time job, just something to cover basic stuff. Toby had his own thing going too, so we kind of stayed out of each other's way during the day. Eventually, I found this job through a guy in town. I don't remember how I got connected to him. I think it was through a small local listing or someone mentioned it. His name was, I think it was Daniel or Dan, something like that. He was older, like late 40s. He had this kind of rushed way of talking, like he didn't want to stay in one place too long. The job was simple. He owned a house not too far from where we were staying, like 15 to 20-minute drive if you had a car, which I didn't anymore. So sometimes I'd get a ride, or he'd pick me up. Other times Toby helped me out. The job was basically just to stay there at night and keep an eye on things. That's literally how he said it. No real explanation beyond that. The house I had to watch was older than ours and bigger. It sat further back from the road, with a narrow driveway that had weeds growing through the cracks. There were trees on both sides, so even during the day it felt a little shaded. At night it got really dark around there. Like you step outside and it feels like the darkness is thicker. Inside the place was mostly empty. There were a few pieces of furniture, like an old couch in the living room, a table with 2 chairs, and some stuff in one of the bedrooms, but it didn't feel like someone actively lived there. More like storage, or something in between, being used and abandoned. I'd sit there, scroll on my phone, sometimes bring my laptop and try to get work done. There wasn't much to do. The house would make noises, like all old houses do. Pipes, wood shifting, that kind of thing. At first I noticed every little sound, but after a couple nights I got used to it. Dan would check in sometimes, but not every night. He told me I didn't need to do anything special, just be there. Keep lights on in certain rooms, make it look occupied. That was it. He paid in cash, which I didn't question at the time because I needed the money. One night I was sitting in the living room, had one of the lamps on, and I think I was watching something on my phone with headphones in. It must have been around, like 10. I heard a car pulling up. You could hear tires on gravel pretty clearly out there. I took my headphones off and looked out the front window. It was Dan. He had come by before, so it didn't feel weird at first. But there was another guy in the passenger seat. They both got out and walked up to the house. Dan didn't knock. He just opened the door like usual. The other guy followed him in. I remember thinking it was a little odd, just because he never mentioned bringing anyone, but I didn't think much of it beyond that. Dan just nodded at me when he came in, like a quick acknowledgement. He didn't introduce the other guy, didn't say anything about why they were there. They went straight down the hallway toward one of the back rooms. I could hear their footsteps, then a door closing. I sat there for a bit, not really sure what to do. It felt like I shouldn't go back there, like it wasn't my place. So I just stayed in the living room. Time passed, an hour or two. I didn't hear much, just occasional muffled sounds, like movement or something being shifted around. Eventually they came back out. Same as before, no real explanation. Dan just said something like, "You're good for the night," which he'd said before. They both left, got back in the car, and drove off. That was it. I remember sitting there afterward thinking it was a little strange, but also telling myself it probably wasn't a big deal. People have stuff to do. Maybe he was checking something in the house. Maybe that guy was helping him with something. It didn't really involve me. But later that same night, it had to be at least an hour after they left, I started hearing something. At first it was really faint. I thought it might have been outside, like an animal or something in the trees. But it happened again, and it sounded like it was coming from inside the house. Not the living room, more like deeper in, near the hallway. It wasn't a clear sound. It's like movement, someone stepping lightly. Then I heard something that definitely wasn't just the house. Footstep. Just one, maybe two. Slow. So I walked toward the hallway, and I could feel this weird tension building. The hallway light was off, so it was darker there. I turned it on, and everything looked normal. Doors closed, nothing out of place. I checked the back rooms one by one, opened the doors, looked inside, empty. Same as before. No one there, no movement, nothing out of place that I could tell. I remember even checking the windows, thinking someone somehow got in, which didn't really make sense, but I didn't know what else to think. Everything was locked. Eventually, I just went back to the living room and sat down again. I didn't hear anything else for the rest of the night, but I didn't really relax. After that, I tried to tell myself it was just the house. I didn't mention it to Dan. A few days went by, and things went back to normal. Same routine, same quiet nights. I almost forgot about it, or at least pushed it to the back of my mind. Then another night came where Dan showed up again. This time, though, it was a different guy with him. I noticed that right away. Different build, different way of moving. Again, no introduction, no explanation. They just came in, went straight to the back of the house. I remember feeling that same uneasy feeling as before, but stronger this time. Like something was off, but I couldn't explain why. I stayed in the living room again, trying to focus on my phone, but I kept glancing toward the hallway. It must have been 30 or 40 minutes after they went in when I started hearing raised voices. At first it was just talking, but louder than before. Then it turned into something else. It wasn't just talking anymore. It sounded like arguing. It got louder, and then I heard what sounded like something hitting the floor hard. I froze, trying to decide if I should go check or stay where I was. And that's when the yelling turned into something that didn't sound like arguing anymore. It sounded like, I don't know how to say it exactly, panic, like someone losing control. And I remember standing up, walking toward that hallway again, and this time it felt different. Like I shouldn't be going there at all, but I did anyway, and as I got closer I could hear it clearer, and then suddenly everything went quiet. And that silence wasn't normal silence. It was the kind where your ears start ringing a little because it just drops off too fast. 1 second there was yelling, like real yelling, and something hitting the floor, and then nothing at all, not even like shifting around or anything. I didn't go all the way down right away. Kind of halfway between the living room and those back rooms, trying to listen again. I remember thinking they heard me coming and just stopped. I called out, "You guys good?" Just enough so they'd hear it if they were right there. No answer. That's when I walked the rest of the way down. The light in the hallway was on, same as before, and the door to that back room, the one they went into, wasn't fully closed. It was open. I pushed it open. I don't even know why I did it slow, like that would help anything. Dan was on the floor. He was on his back, kind of angled toward the side, like he had fallen and didn't move after. There was blood. The other guy wasn't there. That was the first thing that hit me after I realized what I was seeing. There were only 2 of them that went in. Now it was just Dan, and he wasn't moving at all. I looked around the room, like the other guy was just out of sight or something, but there wasn't anywhere to hide in there. It was basically empty except for a few things against the wall. I said his name, or what I thought was his name, like Dan, but I didn't get close right away. I don't know why, I just didn't. Something felt wrong beyond just him being hurt. The room felt off. That's the only way I can explain it. After a few seconds, I stepped in and got closer. I didn't touch him at first, just looked. His eyes were open but not focused, and he wasn't breathing, at least not that I could see. I ended up checking anyway, like leaning in a bit, but there was nothing. This wasn't something I could just stand there and think about. I backed out of the room and grabbed my phone. I called 911. I told them where I was as best as I could, because like I said, it was kind of a rural area, not super clearly marked. I said there was a man on the floor, bleeding, not responding, and that someone else had been there and was gone. They told me to stay on the line, asked if I could check for a pulse, stuff like that. I tried, but I already knew. There wasn't anything there. When they got there, lights flashing through the windows, it was honestly a relief. I went outside to meet them because I didn't want to be inside anymore. I tried to explain everything again. They asked me about the other man, what he looked like, what they were doing, how long they'd been there. I didn't have good answers for most of it. I barely saw the guy, and I had no idea what they were doing in that room. They went inside, checked everything, and I stayed outside near one of the cars. It was cold, I remember that. I didn't even grab a jacket when I walked out. One of the officers eventually came back out and told me they were calling it in, and yeah, he was gone. There wasn't anything they could do. After that, things got just confusing. They kept me there for a while, asking questions over and over, like going through the same timeline again. When did they arrive? How long were they inside? When did I hear the yelling? When did it stop? I answered as best as I could. They searched the property that night, from what I remember, at least around the house and immediate area. They didn't find the other guy. It was like he just left without a trace. The police contacted me again. More questions, more details. They also told me some things that I didn't know before. Like the house I was watching wasn't exactly being used the way I thought it was. They didn't tell me everything, and I could tell they were holding back some details. But they did mention that the place had been under some kind of quiet investigation already. Not like full-on active, but there had been reports. People coming and going at odd hours, stuff like that. Neighbors noticing things. At some point, I don't remember when, they found more inside that house. Not just in that room, but in parts of the property that I hadn't even looked at. Like underneath sections of the floor, and I think outside too, near the back where the trees start. Human remains. Some of it was older, not recent, which means, I don't know. It means that whatever was happening there had been going on longer than I was around. I remember thinking about those nights. I sat in that living room, just on my phone, hearing small noises and brushing them off, thinking it was just the house settling, or whatever. I keep going back to that first night when I heard footsteps after they left. I checked the rooms, I looked around, and I didn't find anything. But now I keep thinking, what if I just didn't see it, or I wasn't looking in the right place, or it was somewhere I didn't think to check? Dan, if that was even his real name, which I'm not completely sure about now, was just one part of something bigger, I think. I stopped working after that, obviously. It's probably the worst thing I've ever been around. Not just because of what happened that night, but because of everything around it. The idea that I was sitting there, night after night, in a place where something was already very wrong, and I just didn't know. This was somewhere in the Midwest. There was this stretch past a grain storage place, then the road thins out, and eventually you hit dirt roads. That's where we went. There used to be some kind of animal farm out there, or processing place. I never got a straight answer on that. Some people said it was for cattle, or it shut down because of health issues, like contamination or something. It had this long, low building, kind of like a warehouse, but older, with faded siding and these big sliding doors. And there were smaller structures around it, like sheds or holding areas. It had that look of something that used to be busy and then just stopped. We didn't go there specifically, at least not at first. We parked a little ways off near a tree line because that's just where people usually went. There was already evidence others had been there before. Empty cans, a burnt-out patch where someone had a fire at some point, stuff like that. It wasn't creepy or anything at the start. There were crickets, and every now and then you'd hear something moving in the trees, probably animals. We were just sitting around talking. There were 5 of us total. We'd all known each other since high school, or at least around then. Nothing unusual about the group. Nobody was acting strange. If anything, it was kind of boring. Just the same conversations we always had. At some point, someone, I think Dylan, mentioned the old building. You could kind of see part of it through the trees if you walked a little further out, enough to know it was there. And then of course someone says we should check it out. I didn't really care either way, but everyone started getting up, grabbing their stuff, and heading in that direction. So I went with them. It wasn't far, a few minutes walking, but the ground got uneven the closer we got. There were patches of dirt, some gravel, and old tire tracks that didn't really go anywhere anymore. The building looked worse up close. Bigger than I thought too. The metal siding was rusted in spots, and some of the doors were half off their tracks. One of them was open just enough to see inside, but it was dark. You couldn't really make out anything past a few feet. There was this smell too. I remember thinking it smelled kind of like an old garage. We didn't go straight inside. We just walked around it first. There were these metal frames out back, maybe where animals were kept or something, and some broken fencing. It didn't feel dangerous, just abandoned. People had definitely been there before too, because there was graffiti on parts of the wall, mostly faded. At some point, the group kind of split without saying anything. Not like we were separating on purpose, just people drifting. Chris and Aaron went around one side of the building. Matt stayed near the front, and me and Dylan walked a bit further out toward the back area. I don't even remember what we were talking about. Then Dylan said he was going to head back toward the others because he left his drink. I told him I'd catch up in a minute. I don't even know why I didn't just go with him. I just didn't. So I was alone for a bit. Not long. I don't think it was long. I walked a little further behind the building where there was more open space. The ground there was flatter, kind of packed dirt. There were these big metal hooks or rails attached to part of the structure. I didn't get too close to those, but I remember seeing them and thinking, yeah, this probably was some kind of processing place. And that's when I heard this sound. It sounded like a voice. It said, "Help." It was quieter, like close, but also not. I know that doesn't make sense. It didn't echo, but it didn't sound like it came from a specific direction either. I stopped walking. I was just trying to figure out if I actually heard it or if it was one of those things where your brain fills in sounds because nobody else reacted. I didn't hear anyone else say anything. It sounded like a woman. I'm not 100% sure, but it felt like it. Not like someone I recognized, just a voice. I remember looking around, like turning in a full circle, trying to see if someone was there. There wasn't. Nothing moved. The trees were still. The building behind me was just there. No doors opening, no footsteps. I even said something like hello or something like that. I don't remember what I said, but I said something out loud. I thought someone was messing with me, like one of the guys trying to freak me out. But it didn't sound like them. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. I waited a few seconds, and then I just decided to head back. It didn't feel worth it to keep standing there. If it was someone joking, they'd come out eventually. If it wasn't, I didn't know what it was. So I started walking back toward the front of the building where the others were, but I noticed something behind me. It was more like I felt it before I saw it, like that feeling when you know someone's there. I glanced over my shoulder, not expecting anything. But there was someone, a woman. She was walking behind me. Not far, something like that. Close enough that I should have heard her walking, but I didn't. That's what stood out immediately. She was wearing this dark green dress. It wasn't like modern looking. I don't know how to explain it. It just didn't look like something you'd wear out there, especially not in the woods. It hung kind of loose, and it moved a little, even though there wasn't really wind. And she didn't have shoes on. I noticed that because the ground wasn't exactly smooth. There were rocks, bits of metal, uneven dirt, but she was just walking like it didn't matter. I stopped walking. She kept moving. I just turned fully to look at her, and I couldn't see her face. Not like it was covered. It just didn't look right. It was there, but it wasn't clear, like trying to focus on something and your eyes just won't adjust. I remember blinking a couple times, thinking it was just dark or my eyes were messing up. But no, it stayed like that. I couldn't make out her eyes or her mouth, nothing, just a shape. And she was still walking toward me. I actually felt scared. I took a step back. She didn't speed up, just kept coming forward at the same pace. I remember saying something again, I don't know what, asking who she was or what she wanted. No response. She just kept walking. And I swear, I know this sounds fake, but it felt like the air got heavier. Like it was harder to breathe. I ran. I ran back toward the front of the building where the others were. I could hear my own breathing, and I think I heard something behind me too, but I didn't turn around to check. I got around the side of the building and saw Matt and the others near the front. They were just standing there, talking like nothing was happening. I slowed down, looked like an idiot, and when I got to them I was trying to explain what I just saw. They just looked at me like I was joking, or like I was drunk, which I wasn't, not really. I told them there was a woman back there, that she was following me, that something was wrong with her face, and they kept asking what I meant, like, what do you mean wrong? And I couldn't explain it. I still can't. So a couple of them went to check. I think Chris and Dylan went around the back again while me and Matt stayed near the front. When they came back, they said there was nobody there. Just empty. And I was trying to make sense of it because I knew what I saw. I didn't imagine it. I know how that sounds, but I didn't. I felt this sharp pain in my leg, like sudden, like I'd brushed against something hot. I actually grabbed my leg through my jeans and it hurt more when I touched it. I didn't say anything right away. I thought I scraped it on something when I was running or something like that. It felt like a burn. And that didn't make sense because there was nothing there that could have... there wasn't any fire, nothing hot, nothing like that at all. I didn't check it right then. I just didn't. We ended up leaving not long after that. Nobody said it out loud, but the mood was off. Even the guys who didn't see anything were quieter than before. No music, barely any talking, and the whole time, my leg kept hurting, like this deep, stinging feeling that would come and go. I didn't really look at it until I got home, and when I did, I kind of just stood there because I didn't understand how it got there. I was in my bathroom when I finally checked it properly. The light in there is kind of harsh, like too bright for a small space, and it made everything look more sharper than it should. I pulled my jeans up just enough to see my lower leg. There were marks, not just one, a few of them, kind of clustered, but not exactly in a pattern I could understand. They looked like burns, like actual burns, not scratches or anything like that. The skin was raised a little in some spots and darker in others, like it had already started to change color. I remember touching one of the edges lightly and pulling my hand back right away because it hurt more than I expected. And the thing is, I kept trying to connect it to something normal. Like maybe I brushed against metal out there and it was heated from the sun or something stupid like that, even though it was already late and nothing felt warm when we were walking around. Or maybe I scraped it and it just looked worse than it was. It looked like something had actually burned into the skin. I didn't tell anyone that night. I just went to bed. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that shape of her face. Or not even a shape, that's the thing. I'd think I almost saw eyes or something, and then it would just blur again in my head. At some point I got up and checked the window in my room. I don't know why. It's not like I thought she followed me home or anything like that. I didn't think that. I don't think I thought that, but I still checked. The next morning, the burns were still there. They looked a little worse actually, more defined. Like overnight, they kind of settled into what they were going to be, if that makes sense. They weren't bleeding. I ended up texting Matt about it. I didn't mention the burns right away. I just asked if he or anyone else saw anything weird last night after I ran back. He said no, and that Chris and Dylan were joking about how I looked like I saw a ghost or something. He said it like it was funny. I told him again about the woman. Tried to explain the face thing better, but it still didn't come out right. He just said it was someone messing with us, like someone else hanging around the area. Which, that could have been possible. Later that day, I showed him the burns. I sent a picture. He didn't reply right away, which is not like him. Usually he answers pretty quick. When he did, he said that's weird and asked if I touched something hot out there. So I said no, because I didn't. I kept thinking back, trying to remember if there was anything at all that could have caused it, but there wasn't. I didn't fall, didn't lean against anything like that, didn't even get close to those metal hooks or anything behind the building. I also started noticing the burns would hurt at random times, sudden sharp stings, like how it felt that first time. It would last a few seconds and then fade. I checked them every day, and they didn't spread, but they didn't really heal either. They just stayed the same for a while. A few days later, I think it was 4 or 5 days after, Chris messaged the group chat asking if anyone wanted to go back out there. He said he wanted to see the place properly, like inside the building this time. Dylan said he was down if others were. Matt said maybe. It turned into one of those half plans that nobody fully commits to. Chris asked me directly after that, like in a separate message. Said like, you coming this time or you still freaked out? I told him I didn't know, and I didn't. Part of me wanted to go back, just to prove to myself that it was nothing, that there was some explanation I missed. But the other part of me, I don't know, it just didn't sit right. I ended up not going. I said I had stuff to do, which wasn't really true. I just stayed home. They went without me. It was during the afternoon, so it wasn't even dark. Chris sent a few pictures in the chat later, inside the building mostly. It looked exactly how you'd expect. Old equipment, big open space, dust, some broken stuff. Nothing out of place. No mention of anything weird. I asked them later, like seriously, if they saw or heard anything at all. They all said no. Even Chris, who would have probably played it up if something small happened, just said it was boring. That should have made me feel better. It kind of did, for a bit. But then that night, when I was in bed again, I had this, not a dream exactly. I don't want to call it that because it didn't feel like one. It was like I was half awake, like I knew I was in my room, but something else was there too. I heard that voice again. Same as before, just that one word. Help. I didn't even open my eyes at first. I just listened. After a minute or two, I sat up and turned the light on. My room was empty. Door closed, window the same as before. Nothing changed. I checked my leg again after that. The burns were still there. Same shape, same color. I don't know how to explain this next part because it's not like something huge happened after that. It's more like things just stayed with me. The burns eventually faded, but not completely. Even now there are faint marks. You wouldn't notice them unless you were looking for them, but I know they're there. I never went back to that place. None of us really did after that second visit. It just stopped being something we talked about. Every now and then it comes up. Someone will say, "Remember when you thought you saw that woman?" And I'll just kind of go along with it, like, yeah, that was weird. But I don't think they understand what I actually saw. Or didn't see, I guess. Because it wasn't just a person. If it was just someone walking around out there, I wouldn't still think about it like this. It was the way she looked, or the way I couldn't look at her properly. And the fact that she didn't say anything, even though I heard that voice before I saw her. I've tried to connect those two things in my head, like it was just someone calling out, and I found them. It felt like she was just coming toward me. I don't know what caused the burns. I've looked up stuff like different kinds of injuries or reactions or whatever, just to see if anything matches. Nothing really does. At least not in a way that makes sense with everything else.